So we can't have a discussion about hardwood without talking about the species itself. So for most people, when they think of a hardwood floor, they typically have a mental image of an oak board. Meander oak is one of these boards. This is an oak hardwood floor. Where you see the lines in this, these are the rings of the tree, and they get exposed in different ways and different patterns depending on the way that the tree is cut for the hardwood floor. But one thing that you'll notice about oak is that the grain really takes the stain differently than the rest of the board. And so you end up with this big contrast between where a ring of the tree was, where the grains were in this board. Now, you don't have to remember what each board is, so Meander oak is an oak board. And if we flip the board over, yes, of course you'll see different colors, but you'll also notice that at the bottom of the board you see that this is a red oak board. So you don't have to remember the individual species. You can see it right here on the board. The next board that we have is a woodcrest board. Woodcrest is a hickory board. I just want you to notice the difference. Yes, of course, these two boards have a different color, but that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the grain. And you'll notice that the hickory tends to have a really tight grain. Even in the open areas, you can see that it's tighter than the oak open areas. Hickory is a tree that grows slower than an oak tree. It's a harder tree than an oak tree. And so you'll see it's just a very different look. And you can see a difference in the grain structure. Now, suppose you have a customer that doesn't really like this high contrast in the graining versus the way the stain is picked up by the grain. Well, maple is a much cleaner look. You can still see the grain in the board, but when you're looking at a maple floor, it's a much cleaner floor with respect to the grains. Even knots tend to disappear a little bit in the staining, and this board in particular has some rough saw marks in it. It's part of the visual of the board. But notice there is a dark knot here, but even here, this graining is, you can see it, but it's much more subtle than what you would see in the hickory board or in the oak board. There are other boards as well. So Hutton Creek is an acacia board. Acacia is a hardwood. It's almost as hard as hickory. But you'll notice here that the graining, although it takes a stain a little different, it's more faint. It's just a completely different look, and there's not another board that looks like an acacia board. And then the last board that we have is birch. And you can see the difference in the way that this grain looks. It's a cleaner look than some of the other ones, and it just has a really unique pattern in the way that this one was cut. So we've looked at oak, we've looked at hickory, maple, acacia, and birch. And there's many, many other species that are out there, but these are the most common 5 species that you'll see.